Today we are making a denim skirt, one for me and one for my daughter Sophie. First things first, we have to remove the kitty cat from the ironing board. She's not usually allowed near my sewing unless it's just sewing for me. I don't let the cats near when I'm sewing for other people. But this is Skunk, and as you can see, she's pretty interested in everything I'm doing. So this fabric was gifted to me by a family whose mom was a quilter, and she had gone on home, and so they gifted me 10 trash bags full of fabric. Some of it I set aside and donated to local quilters at the senior center here in town. The rest of it I did keep, just because I use it. And I use a lot of recycled fabric for what I do. So when I pulled this fabric out of the bags, I immediately went, ooh, I don't know what she was making out of it, but I know I'm going to make a skirt. And I was going to make one for me, and then I have enough left over that I do one for my daughter. Sophie's is shorter. Mine goes to mid-calf, which is what the fabric length allowed. Could have gone longer if I'd made horizontal stripes, but all us ladies know, you don't want horizontal stripes across your butt. It's not an attractive look, especially wide horizontal stripes like this. These horizontal stripes, I think she cut 3-inch strips and then sewed them together so they're like 2.5 inches wide. So to start, actually, I drafted this pattern. I wouldn't even call it a pattern. I did all of it on the fabric itself from scratch. I measure my waist, and I folded the tape measure into fourths, and that's what I used to draft with. Then I folded my fabric to where it was in fourths, and along the folded edges I marked my waistband, and I dropped down about 2.5 inches so I have enough for the fold down for the casing for the elastic, because I'm just doing a simple elastic waistband on this. This is just going to be like my run to Walmart, grocery shopping, simple, everyday skirt, which used to I wouldn't wear skirts, but now I'm more comfortable in them than I am jeans or anything else. Except at the house, I wear pajama stretch loungy pants. But I marked the waistband, and then I placed my antique measuring stick, yardstick, on the diagonal from the bottom of my waistband to the corner of the fabric, and I just took a blue Sharpie and I just marked the line all the way down. This is an antique yardstick, which I buy them when I can find them at antique stores and flea markets, and my goal is eventually one day when I have my dedicated sewing room again, I want to make my tabletop, and I want yardsticks on the tabletop, both for decorative and practical uses. But they're handy when I'm doing this because I can draft an A-line skirt really easy. Mark the waistband, then the bottom of the waistband to the corner of the fabric. Use your yardstick, because I am not a yardstick. My legs are not a yardstick long. And that's it. So then I go back and I cut. And even though when I measured everything out, I added some for seam allowance, I am cutting outside of my line to give a little extra seam allowance. Just, at least in my view, it's better to have too much than not enough, because you can always take extra out. You cannot put extra back in without it looking funny for the most part. So, yeah, that's kind of how I look at it, you know. But I also had decided I was going to do French seams, which you need a little extra for that seam allowance anyways, because your seam allowance ends up being about 3/4 of an inch instead of like 5/8. And typically I do my seam allowances when it's just a plain seam allowance at 1/4 inch anyways. So I took it over the machine and I put wrong sides together. So I'm sewing with the right sides facing me. And I started at the bottom because I'd rather have the bottom line up than I would the top. It's a weird thing I do. I don't know. I find it's easier to deal with anything being off at the top waistband measurement than I do at the bottom. So I like my hems pretty precise. And I like my hems to be easy because they're one of my least favorite things in the world to do is a hem. So I start at the bottom and work up. It's just a preference. And here I am not using seam. I'm not using pins. And yeah, I know. But denim's pretty easy to work with. It's not slippery or anything. It's actually really forgiving material to work with. And I'm just not using pins. I'm just pinching the fabric together in my right hand and feeding through with my left hand. And that's where I made the turn to make the waistband. And then folded it over to where it's right sides together and I'm working on the wrong side of fabric. And I'm pulling the seam I just did taut and pulling it out, and then I'm running it with a 1/2 inch. So for my machine, I moved the first seam I did, I used the middle position, and I lined up not even at the edge of my foot, but at the opening, the needle opening, where the foot has the forks, I lined up with the fork, so it's not even at the edge. And this time, I put my needle in the left hand position, and I'm just running through normally. And I'm holding that seam tight and finger pressing it as I go, and then feeding it through with my left hand. Stitch to where I'm at the end, pull it back out, and see, hold it and seam. What French seams do, it gives you a very, very nice finished seam, and it cuts down on fraying. Most of your jeans, the seam that they do on jeans that has the stitching, outside stitching, they're doing a French seam, but in the process of the French seam, they're sewing it down. So you get that real thick raised seam on your jeans. That's what that seam is. They just stitch it down on the outside. These skirts went very, very quick. I am not fast forwarding on this video or using speed up on this video. This is actual time, and this says 30 minutes. It actually took me a total of 2 hours from start to finish. I cut out like potty breaks and kids asking questions, whatnot. And I didn't show all the hands. I didn't show making Sophie's skirt until I got to her hem. So that's where part of the difference went from to 2 hours, from 30 minutes to 2 hours. And see, this is the other side. And there's that squared off end for the hem, and turn it to do the diagonal. I found a squared off at the end for the hem. Having it squared off is easier. Makes it lay flatter. Makes it easier to fold up your hem. So this is the same process as before. I have, in recent years, you can get me wear a skirt or a dress, saved my life. There were a few instances I even wore pants to church. Few instances where I would be willing to church because I was raised to dress for church. I wore dresses here and there with church, mostly pants. Funerals, I would wear a dress. And something else that was instilled in me. Weddings. Those are basically it. And I've developed a distaste for leggings and stretch pants, and I wear jeans, but I'm just not the biggest fan of them. I don't feel as comfortable in them anymore. So, just noticed I'm more comfortable in long skirts. So I've started wearing long skirts. This is actually going to be a shorter skirt for me. So it hits me about mid-calf. Lower mid-calf. And literally I typically just wear to the floor. At least my ankle length. I'm just more comfortable that way. So this is where I'm trimming the first seam, and I'm trimming it down. I decided to show it this time. Trimming it down with pinking shears, and I'm being very, 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 because it's such a thin seam, being very careful not to clip the stitching. So this right here is the most fiddly bit of this whole skirt that I did. Even when I did the French knots on my daughter's hem, it was not this fiddly. And I made her skirt, even though hers is shorter, I made her skirt the same way. French seams, trimming it out the same. The only thing I did different is because I used the scrap pieces is why hers shorter. But it does come to the top of her knees. And then also, I just ran a hem on hers, and instead of using a straight stitch hem, mercy, I just lost the word. On mine, I just ran a straight stitch for the hem. See, this is the other part. After I trimmed it, go back and do the pull out to do the finished seam on side seams. But for the hems, I did just a straight stitch over stitch. What? You can see it. I just folded the hem up and top stitch. That was the word. Why I couldn't think of top stitch, I don't know. I top stitched my hem down with just white thread and a straight stitch. On Sophie's, I did a green, a bright green, like Kelly green, and I used the feather stitch on my machine, and I spread it. I made it the largest I could on my machine, and I ran that instead of just a straight top stitch. I did the feather stitch in green, and then I went back and hand did French knots in a light red color, which for some reason actually turns out on the skirt it looks more like a rose color, a rosy pink, dark rose red, kind of in between rose and a pink and a red, like a rosy. And I did French knots every little bit on hers, and it turned out so cute. I did not get pictures of that detail though. I do show you how I do the French knots at the end. So I wish I had videoed everything I did for my Renaissance dress. We're taking the stick ponies and everything I do for my business to a Renaissance fair this year, and as a vendor you have to dress up. So I have made both of the boys, and I've made mine. I've made my husband's blouse. I'm fixing to make his kilt. He wants to wear a kilt. So, and then I've got to make Sophie a dress. See, I finally used pins. I did press the seam up, or this is the waistband. I did not press this. I just pinned it. Double checked that my elastic will fit for my placement. Get it all lined up, and I'll just stitch, go to town. If you hadn't noticed, I stitch everything. I sew the same way I drive, my foot flat on the ground. It's a problem. At least on my truck, I have cruise control, so I don't get tickets. But if it's left to me to control the speed, my foot's flat on the floor. It's another one of those, can't teach old dog new tricks. So I just ran my elastic. And this is the hem. I did press and starch the hem. Just makes it easier for me. And I'm having to rethread my machine. I don't remember why I was having to rethread my machine. Oh yeah, I came back to my machine and the kitten had Just gonna subscribe, all that. If you don't want to, that's cool too. Anyways, have a great day. Thank you for watching. I did not pin this bottom hem because I did starch it down really, really well. I use Mary Ellen's Best Press, and I like the lavender scent one. The purple does not show up on anything, and I have used that to starch satins and silks and chiffons, and I used to make pageant wear, and so I've used that on everything. Back when I made pageant wear is when I was first introduced to that. They carried it only at Hancock's, and so I was like, well, I wonder. It worked beautifully to make the little organza and chiffon skirts stand up, the ruffles. I would press it, just had to mind what I had my iron set on, because there were a couple of times that I polyester organza got melted and I had iron shape in my ruffle and I had to cut that off. But it worked great as long as you had your iron set on the right thing. And see, this skirt actually goes together pretty quick. Aside from the pressing, I have this pretty much made within 30 minutes. I like quick projects, especially when I'm just doing something for me. And this part's a little bit fiddly because of all the seams involved, because the denim was stitched together. It does make it harder to feed the elastic through. But I've had worse situations with it, so it wasn't that bad. I did get it all done and have to go back and pull the elastic back out because I had it twisted, and that's something that will drive me absolutely crazy, is a twisted elastic. So but that's something, when you buy store-bought clothes, how many of y'all have bought something from the store that has an elastic band in it, and you get home and you wear it, it's like pinching in one spot, and you start feeling on that waistband's twisted and there's no way to take it out? I have actually taken scissors to the fabric, made my own line to untwist the elastic band. And a lot of times, store-bought clothing, they sew the elastic band in the cover stitch. When they sew the waistband, they just fold it over. And so you can't always fix that. I will not wear an elastic waistband with a twisted waistband. It is horrible. But when you're doing your own clothes, you can always fix your own stuff. See, that's where I got it twisted. And I wasn't paying a close enough attention. I seem to have the prettiest hand movements when I'm doing this. That pinky stays out. Like I'm stereotypically drinking a cup of tea, right? Oh, the other night I got to, as I was going to sleep, getting ready for bed, I was drinking my peppermint tea because I had a tummy issue. I was drinking some peppermint tea, and I got to watch Gone with the Wind while drinking peppermint tea. Thought I was fancy. Of course, after about 5 minutes, my husband fell asleep. I couldn't hear the movie anymore. His snoring's not like what it used to be. It's just... Ah, there's the end. I should have known when everything matched up like it was perfect, that it was a twisted waistband, because I never get it that perfect at the end. Another pet peeve with elastic waistbands that bothers me is, especially when you buy clothes, is the elastic seems to be easily popped inside it. And that drives me crazy. So, I always overlap the elastic over an inch. And I stitch on both sides, and I go down with a zigzag and change it over and go back and forth a couple of times with a straight stitch. Do that again on the other end of that inch overlap, so I've got double stitches. I also make sure that there's not a bulge in between also. This is Sophie's hem. See the little green feather stitch on it? And then I'm just doing a little French knot. I'm using cotton quilting thread, and I have run it through beeswax a couple of times. And then I just make a French knot. Pull it up, wrap it around 3 times, go back in through the hole that it's coming out of. And here you see the end result. It's me and Sophie outside in front of the... So this is how we made our quick skirt. I mean, the finish isn't perfect. I didn't finish off all my seams, and the seams on the fabric itself had already been done and not finished. I'm okay with that because it's for me. But this is our finished product, my skirt and Sophie's skirt. This is us taking a picture together. Isn't she cute? Anyways, if you like what I did, take time and comment. I would really love to hear y'all's comments. And or see, read. And like, subscribe, share it. Anything you want to do. It's not mandatory. I try to upload at least once a week. Try. Very hard. I don't always succeed. But there's always something interesting on here. Anyways, have a great day.